So as a narcissist, I hate vulnerability. Vulnerability literally sucks. There was a time we were in counseling a couple weeks ago, and we went through, it was a tough counseling session. Like, we both had to share a bunch of stuff. We both had to be vulnerable. We both had to be honest about a couple of different things. And we got through, and the counselor, I never forget this, the counselor at the end, like, looked at me and said, like, thank you for sharing, because I know that was tough. He was like, you're vulnerable. I was like, yeah, I know it sucked, because I felt it. Like, felt it, like, where I was like, oh, I hate this. And that's something, like, growing up that I always seemed to feel and I always seemed to have, because I felt like if I was actually vulnerable, if people actually knew me, if they knew what I was thinking, what I was feeling, what I was interacting, then I'd be judged, or, I'd get a lecture, or, it wouldn't be valid. And so as a result, I hid it. And I wanted to make sure that I was never vulnerable again. So I hid that under my perfection, under my lies, under my gaslighting, under everything that I did, because I didn't want to be vulnerable. So you might ask, okay, like, why are you on here now? Like, what's changed? Why are you vulnerable now? It's been a long process, it's been a long road, and it's still going to be a long process. I got a long ways to go. But one thing I've been realizing over the past couple months is without vulnerability, there's no hope for change. Like, I can't get anywhere in life. I can't grow. I can't expand myself, my capacity, my knowledge, my wisdom, my family, anything. I can't do anything without getting to a place of vulnerability. Otherwise, everything else is just fake. It's just the same concepts, the same thoughts that I've had over and over and over, and all that does is put me back in a cycle. And so I realize vulnerability is huge in people's lives. But for me, I didn't want to have vulnerability. I didn't want to have vulnerability because vulnerability for a narcissist means you have to actually admit that you're wrong. And that's hard. Because for most narcissists out there, they're not going to say it. I never did. I didn't in our relationship. Closest I probably ever got to saying I was wrong was maybe saying one time, I think I might be less right. But I never really said I was wrong. Because admitting I was wrong would mean I'd have to admit that I did something wrong, or that I was wrong, or that I wasn't perfect. Because that was my mindset. Oh, like, I'm one of the most perfect people out there. Yeah, I'm the humblest person. Yeah, I'm this. Yeah, I'm that. Because I thought that's who I was. I thought that's who I needed to be. I thought that was my best coping mechanism, my best thought, my best version of myself. And so I created that, and I kept that because I didn't want to be vulnerable. I didn't want to be honest with, no, I actually suck. I lie. I cheat. I abuse. But I didn't want to admit that. I didn't want to share any type of vulnerable moments with anybody out there, whether because I didn't feel safe, or because I didn't care, or because I didn't want to interact with people. Like, you name it. There's a lot of different things. But vulnerability is key to being able to identify and grow in different areas. You see, for me, I didn't want to admit I was vulnerable because that would mean that I would have to acknowledge some type of shame. I would have to acknowledge some type of accountability. And that accountability seemed like devastating. Like, it seemed like it would be easier just to, like, chop off my arm than it would be to actually admit that I was wrong. So in an argument, I would lie, I would manipulate, I would gaslight. Or I'd start to lose the argument, and I'd figure out, okay, how do I devalue the other person? How do I make this experience, this argument, be the worst thing possible so that they'll never bring it up again? Because I don't want to have to deal with it. I don't have to deal with the possibility that I'm not perfect. I don't have to deal with the possibility that I was wrong. There's a lot that goes back to the feeling of, like, I was wrong. I don't want to admit that, so I'm going to fight that with every single bit that I have. So with vulnerability, like, growing up, like, that looked like hiding. I became more of a covert narcissist as far as, like, my lies got really good so that people didn't know that I was lying. My manipulation got really good so I could figure out and get what I wanted. So we'd have, like, hard topics, maybe hard conversations. Typically those were excused away. Those were devalued. Those were laughed away. Like, growing up, my parents were like, you can never have a serious conversation with you, because I didn't want a serious conversation. That was scary. That was vulnerable. That was shameful. So as a result, I would hide from that. I would make jokes. I would laugh. Like, for a good half of my life, over half of my life, a lot of hard conversations were done with a pillow in front of me. Like, seriously, like, you probably think it's like ridiculous, but like literally, like I'd take a pillow and I'd either hold it here or I'd literally be like this. Yeah. It sounds pretty ridiculous, especially when I was like a 20-year-old doing that. Didn't want the hard conversations. Those hard conversations I wasn't willing to acknowledge, wasn't willing to open myself up to because of the fact that I'd have to be vulnerable. There's no way to change, and there's no path to growth without vulnerability. Because if a person thinks that they are the best person ever, if a person thinks they have it all figured out, then there's no possibility for a different reality to come in and say, hey, I need to grow and I need to change. That'll never happen. Because they're only looking at themselves. And so that's what I did. I only looked at myself. I only looked at who I was. So that means no growth, no chance of loving, having empathy, connecting with people, anything like that. There's no chance of that because of the fact that I wasn't willing to be honest and I wasn't willing to be vulnerable about who I was, about my situation, or anything like that. So as a result, I was stuck. And my stuckness left me in a cycle. In a cycle of I could only get so far in a relationship before I'd fall apart. I would only get so far in a relationship before I would implode it. I would only get so far in a relationship before I wouldn't figure out I can't go any farther, so I'm going to destroy the relationship, make sure that it's destroyed on their part so that I feel better about myself. Hate vulnerability. So some people are like, why are you vulnerable here? Well, this is part of my change and part of my growth. Because when I went through the 30-day challenge with Wake Up Warrior, I started identifying the lies that I had. I started identifying the things that I have in my life that were lies keeping me from myself, from God, from my wife, from work, from friends, from family, all this stuff that was living a false reality, a false lie. And I finally got to the place where I was like, no more. We're going to be honest. We're going to be real. And let me tell you, it sucked. It still does. But it's healing. I'm slowly getting memories back. I'm slowly not having to be crazy about everything that's going on. I have less stress, less anxiety because I'm no longer trying to remember in my head which version of the story I gave to which person. And being vulnerable and honest and actually catching myself at times being like, wait a second, I phrased that wrong. That's incorrect. Or being like, wait, I responded really quickly. That's actually not the truth. It's this. But without that vulnerability, without that openness to who I am, to what I struggle with, there is never going to be the opportunity for me to have any type of growth, any type of potential of anything else than just the cycle that I consisted of every single day, every single month, every single year, without vulnerability. If you like what you see here, please subscribe. We'd love to interact with you. Comment below. Tell us about your experience, interact, ask more questions. We'll throw up more videos. Would love to talk to you more. If you want to talk one-on-one, go to my website, rawmotivations.com. Click on the one-on-ones, grab a time. I talk to a lot of different people. People that are stuck in relationships, that have just come out of relationships, that know they shouldn't go back, but they want to go back. People that struggle with narcissism. And I do different coaching, different things that we walk through to help you get free from the lies and focus on the facts and focus on the story that you need to focus on to get you what you want and to get you where you need to go. Thanks so much.